we're going to get some of the legal issues, believe it or not, the serious international legal issues around this war. The International Court of Justice tomorrow is expected to rule on allegations of genocide against Ukraine by Russia. That was part of President Vladimir Putin's justification for war. He said there was genocide going on in Ukraine.
That's right. Ukraine actually says that Russia manipulated the concept of genocide, falsely claiming acts of genocide occurred in the separatist regions and used that as a pretext for the invasion. Our next guest argued on behalf of Ukraine during closing arguments just last week. He also served as an advisor in the Obama and Biden administrations. We are so glad to have Yale Law professor Harold Koh with us live today. So glad you were able to join us. Harold, we've been talking about you for weeks. We've been talking about this subject for weeks. Let's just start now with the implications of this ruling tomorrow.
What we're trying to do in the case is to establish that Putin lied about the facts. He says that Russia has invaded to prevent genocide, which everybody knows is not true. And then he has a legal lie, which is that it gives him a basis for a military attack, which allows him to kill civilians. So we're trying to debunk both the factual lie and the legal lie. The broader goal is to officially brand him by the court as an outlaw. And Terry's covered legal issues for many years. He knows that when someone is officially branded as an outlaw, that leaves you isolated. It weakens your bargaining position. It will scare off, we hope, the Chinese from backing his position. It opens the door to further enforcement by the UN General Assembly and the Security Council, and it strengthens the basis for sanctions against both Putin and his cronies, both financial sanctions and we hope ultimate accountability for his war crimes in the appropriate tribunal.
And you've basically answered my next question, but expand on it a little bit, because you clearly believe in this process of essentially taking Putin and Russia to court this way. And you've written the tragedy we are all watching in the streets of Kyiv, Kharkiv, Mariupol, Kherson, Volnovakha, and so many other Ukrainian cities is precisely what our modern international legal system was designed to prevent. Now, a lot of people aren't familiar with this system. Harold, what does enforcement of these claims look like? And as you've described it, you've helped us understand. But do you think it can also be an instrument to help bring the war to an end?
Yes, it's a slow, but it's a powerful process to make him an isolated outlaw in an interdependent world. He can't get access to financial transfers, to imports, to semiconductors, to oil, if he's an outlaw. And so the goal is to brand him an outlaw in as many ways as possible through official institutions. And as I said in the argument, his short game is force, but the world's long game is law. This web of law didn't exist in 1945. It was built to prevent another set of aggression and war crimes like we saw in World War II. And the question now is, can we activate that network? Basically, to catch him in a web of lies and law, link the two together, so he has to pay for his lies with law.
So Russia didn't show up to defend itself in court. No surprise. What does that tell you about how the Kremlin views this process?
Well, they didn't show up because they knew they were going to lose. But secondly, also, all their lawyers quit. They found the case indefensible. But the question is whether the court has jurisdiction, even in their failure to show up. If it does, the court can continue to issue orders and people can act on them. I go back to a point I made earlier, which is a prime audience here is China, because China is also very much a part of this network. And the more that it engages with an illegal actor on its side, the more it becomes an outlaw in this system, and the more these various kinds of sanctions will come into play against it. And China has been very careful not to overcommit itself. Yesterday, Jake Sullivan met in Rome with Yang Jiechi, the foreign minister of China, and I'm sure the message that was conveyed was, if this starts getting, if these rulings come down, you need to back away. Now, this is doing exactly what you were describing a minute ago, Terry. It forces Putin into negotiations with a weaker bargaining hand, fewer allies, more isolated. because the law is against him. The main goal here is this is not just Ukraine versus Russia. This is Russia against the entire post-war international legal order. And that potent legal order was designed to work in a situation like this to prevent these kinds of things from happening.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Harold, because this is, the much maligned international system, the system of liberal values as enshrined in international institutions that has been scorned and sometimes ignored over the years, in this instance is really the primary tool that NATO and that European allies are using. But I want to get finally to the war crimes that you mentioned. The number of potential war crimes in Ukraine obviously is staggering. It looks to me sometimes like every shot fired, just these indiscriminate bombings of apartment buildings is a kind of war crime. Hospitals, everything. Killing journalists, obviously, but much more important, civilians.
Almost 100 children.
100 children now. So this is where justice for the victims is the question. And the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, which we've just been talking about between Russia and Ukraine, that's between countries. International Court of Justice is for criminals, for individual criminals. And it's had a lot of problems over the years, delays and other issues. Are you confident that the victims that we see streaming out of Ukraine into Poland and those left behind dead, that they can find justice at the International Criminal Court?
Well, I think we have to keep pushing. Karim Khan, the prosecutor, said on February 28th that there was a reasonable basis to open an investigation into war crimes dating back to 2014, which is when the Russians occupied Crimea and sent their paramilitaries into the Donbass. You're correct. We've got a list of violations that is really extraordinary. Shelling of forbidden targets like hospitals and civilian infrastructure, targeting innocent civilians. You've just heard that the children of President Zelensky are being targeted. The use of cluster munitions and indiscriminate weapon systems, killing of journalists, and also let's not forget the threats to the environment, Chernobyl and Zaporizhzhia. If they were to level one of those nuclear power plants, it could make sections of Europe uninhabitable for 1,000 years. So there are two processes by which the International Criminal Court can assert jurisdiction. One is referral by countries and acceptance by the country where the territory is occurring of the court's jurisdiction. 39 countries have made that referral, and Ukraine has given that permission. So that's one way in. The second, the prosecutor can open his own investigation if it goes through a pretrial chamber of the court, and the president of the court authorized that investigation if in 120 days they decide that there is a basis for a full-scale investigation, they can proceed. But I think what's incredibly important now, Terry and Kira, is gather information, gather videos, assemble an archive, make it impossible for them to deny what happened. And accountability may be slow, but I think it will be sure. And more than that, it will prevent Putin from continuing as a leader after he's committed this set of atrocities.
Well, it's already out there that this is going to go down as the most well-documented conflict in history because of social media, the videos, the people live streaming. I mean, Harold, you say he's going to have to be branded an outlaw. I think you just defined an outlaw right there. We want to follow all your work as we go through this process. Harold Koh, what an honor and pleasure to have you with us today.
It's good to see you again, Terry. Good to see you, Kira.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.